Can you develop some help for self-sabotage? Think about this. If you are successful in other areas of your life, if you have found success in other areas of your life, I would really question if it's actually self-sabotage or if it's something else. The something else is habit. If you're talking self-sabotage or something that's going wrong, you'd think of that as a bad habit. So the way the habit loop works is it starts with a cue or a trigger, something that starts the process. A large percentage of what we do is habit. You get out of bed in the morning, you do your thing, you put your pants on the same way every day. Chances are you put, maybe your right leg in first and your left leg. Whatever processes you do throughout the day are largely habit. You're not thinking in your conscious awareness. That doesn't mean that it's like residing in your unconscious or your subconscious. It just means that you're sort of less than aware. I drove my kids to their school today, and I didn't have to think about where I was going. I just went there. So I'm doing a really complex operation. I'm backing out the car. I'm driving down the road, I'm following stop signs, I'm doing all these things, but I'm not really thinking about it very much. I'm just going through the process of driving to school, operating this, complex machine and navigating to a place away from my home. Those are habits. I'm not consciously aware to the full extent of what I'm doing. I'm just sort of going through the routine. So habits can be good and habits can be bad. And the reality is, without habits, life would be so much harder. You'd have to continually think and use up all your energy to think about how you do something. Like you think a child, someone who has to be very conscious of how to do something. If you've ever watched a child complete some complex task, imagine them tying their shoes. When a young child, 5, 6 years old, is learning to tie their shoes, they really have to concentrate. Their attention is very consciously focused on what they're doing. When you tie your shoes, you might hold a conversation, hanging onto the dog's leash. Maybe you're, doing all different, chewing gum. You might be doing all sorts of things, and you are still completing this complex task without conscious awareness. You're not actually conscious of the fact that you're tying your shoe, you're going through a habit. So the cue comes first, or the trigger, then the habit, and then the reinforcement. A lot of times this is thought of as like a reward or a payoff. I like to think of it more as a reinforcement, because a reinforcement makes it more likely that you will do that behavior again. It's not always a positive thing. So reward or payoff to me is not quite as accurate as reinforcement, something that will cause you to do it again. So you have these cues that start a bad habit or any habit, right? Good habit or whatever, and a reinforcement. The reinforcement makes it more likely that you are going to continue to do those things. So once this habit loop gets established, once you get your reward, you're going to do it again. Next time you come to that situation, that cue or that trigger, you can go back to your habit, whether it's good or bad, and then you act in the way that you did before, and it started again. This is the habit loop. If you want to read a really interesting book on habit, Charles Duhigg's The Power of Habit, it's a really great book. The self-sabotage would fall into this habit area. It's a bad habit, a behavioral pattern that's causing an issue. Two things to keep in mind is being aware of the thinking and the thoughts that are related to that bad habit, self-sabotage, or however you want to identify it. The other thing is, if you have a habit loop where you have the cue, the habit, and the reinforcement, and you're stuck in this habit cycle, in order to divert yourself from continuing in this loop, you need to find a new cue, a new habit. And in the book by Charles Duhigg, The Power of Habit, one of the things that he talks about is really important to identify what your cues are. So for example, I know for me, when I am stressed, when I have a major life change, or even moderate life change, it is difficult for me to continue to do the helpful, healthy things that I do. So whether that means, eating out more, or, I knew when June came, we moved May 30th. I knew that was going to be a difficult time for me to trade effectively, because the stress of moving and everything. I knew that from we've moved many times before. I knew that would be a stressful, difficult time for me to keep the right habits. Once you find yourself on a bad habit, that can be really, really difficult to break up with your bad habit. The best thing you can do is identify what are the cues or what are the triggers that set off this habit loop, and then see if you can find a different reinforcement. So for example, if you know that your bad behaviors come about because of boredom, your cue is that you're bored, or your trigger is that you're bored. So if you know that in the afternoon that you overtrade, for example, because you're bored, so the trigger is boredom, the habit is overtrading, and the reinforcement is it is exciting to trade, right? So even if you're losing money, you're getting to push the buttons, and that's reinforcing for you, even though it's a bad thing. If you know that that's the case, you need to find a different reward, a different reinforcement. For example, maybe in the afternoon, instead of sitting at your computer and continuing that habit loop, maybe you can find something else that you enjoy. Maybe you like shopping. I hate shopping, but a lot of people love shopping. So maybe shopping is something that you could do instead, that you really enjoy, and that would be reinforcing for you. Maybe taking a walk with your neighbor in the afternoon, and you schedule it for 2:00 because you know that's when you're going to be sitting around watching the market, getting yourself in trouble. Maybe you get together with your neighbor at 2:00 every day to go for a walk. That would be another way to eliminate boredom and interrupt that habit cycle. Maybe it's not boredom though. Maybe there's something else. Maybe there's some other thing that you are getting from this loop. Maybe it's not excitement. Maybe there's something else. That is your job to figure out what is it that's causing you to be stuck in this habit loop. And it really, really, really is helpful, again, to think about your thoughts and your beliefs. That can help you understand why you're doing what you're doing. I don't believe that for most people, self-sabotage is what it is. And the reason is, for example, my husband and I are both traders. We've both been successful in various areas of our life, including professionally, as parents, as coaches, as as married, right? As in a variety of different ways, we have been successful. To suspect that trading challenges are caused by self-sabotage for us doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. I mean, I've heard another psychologist say, you are self-sabotaging because you don't believe that you deserve to make money or something like that. Or you don't believe that you deserve to have good things from the market. I just don't think that's true for most people. I'm not saying it's universally not true, but for most people, that doesn't really fit. That doesn't really make sense. In particular, if you have found success in other areas of your life, to me, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. The other reason that I like to intellectually veer away from self-sabotage is because that is what's the opposite of empowerment? Disempowering. When you say, oh, it's something in my unconscious or something in my subconscious or something like self-sabotage, that's or like trauma from your past. Those are very much things outside of your control. We need to be introspective, and I'm talking to myself here, about our trading behavior. I am consciously or without deliberate intention responsible for my behaviors, right? I am choosing to overtrade. I'm choosing to take trades that don't fit my trading plan. These are things that I'm choosing, not things that are happening to me. And while that's a hard pill to swallow, it's also very empowering, because what it does is it means that I can change. I can do something about it. I can change, and I can decide enough is enough. I'm going to do something different. And the reality is, I know and I understand from personal experience that is a harder answer to stomach, right? It is easier to think, oh, it's something about, my subconscious, or something about, it's just kind of happening to me. I can't really help what I'm doing. I can't help that I'm over trading. I can't help that I'm revenge trading. That's not true. Okay. We can stop the bad behaviors. We can change what we're doing. We can change our habit cycle, and we can get back to where we want to be. We can get to where we want to be, making the right choices, doing the right things, making the right trades, Doesn't mean that we're going to be profitable every day. Doesn't mean that we're going to only take perfect trades every day. We can control our choices, we can control our behaviors, and we can control our risk. And so if that's not what you want to hear, you should think about it, because the power really is actually within you, and that should be very empowering and very exciting to think you can do what you want to do. You can change, you can stop doing the behaviors that don't serve you, and you can make a difference in what you do. By the way, that book that I mentioned, Charles Duhigg, is a great audiobook as well. It's an excellent book. And one thing that he talks about is keystone habits. Keystone habits are habits that go together, that sort of like ripple down to other positive behaviors.